let's welcome back. Everybody's had their sugar break. So welcome to the Accelerator and crowd-funded IoT startups. My name is Ron Sege. I'm chairman and CEO of Echelon Corporation. I'm going to be the moderator. So we have three wonderful panelists, one of whom is stuck in traffic. So she will hopefully join. But we're going to get started anyway. So before I let the panelists introduce themselves, I just have a couple of questions. So how many of you are right now looking for money for your company? Not yeah. I'm sorry. Raise your hands again. Okay. Wow. A lot of people looking for money. And how many of you have had experience with crowdfunding a startup? Raise your hands. Okay, a couple. And how many of you have had experience with accelerators? Okay, a couple. Angel funding, couple. Bootstrapped? Everybody else. Okay, terrific. So I wanted to give you a couple of statistics too. I pulled, I'm going to sit down. I pulled off the internet. So on accelerators, depending on the source, there's somewhere between 200 and 5,000 accelerators listed in various sources on the internet, somewhere between 100 plus in Europe, 62 to 100 in India. Notable successes for accelerators, of course, include Airbnb, Dropbox, Looped, Reddit, and TaskRabbit, to name a few. On the crowdfunding side, there are currently 1,000 live tech projects on Kickstarter, and about 999 of them look like they're drones. So that may be a bit of a crowded space. The good news is the top funded campaigns are almost all IoT type things. Pebble Time, $20 million raised. The Coolest Cooler, yeah, $13 million raised. Wow. The Pebble E-Ink, $10 million raised, and the Xano drone, $3.5 million raised. So clearly, accelerators and crowdfunding is a legitimate source of funding for things in general and for the IoT. So that's what we're going to spend the next half an hour talking about. So I would like our panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into questions. And by the way, if you have questions, just like the last sessions, the number is there on the screen. And if you text A1 in your question, it will magically show up on my iPad. So, Ruth.
Hi, I'm Ruth Cox. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for People Power Company. I work for Gene Wang. I think all of you have seen Gene here today several times. He organized the IoT segment of today's event. So I have a background in marketing to the telecommunications industry for companies like Tandem Computers and Hewlett-Packard. But most recently, I was a presidential appointee from President Obama. I ran the General Services Administration here in the Pacific Rim region, and I was GSA's nationwide Chief Sustainability Officer. Thank you.
Great. Can you all hear Ruth? Is she loud enough? Turn up. Can you turn up? What's your number? No number. Okay, if you could figure out how to turn up Ruth's mic, that would be great. And Ravi?
21.
Oh,
sure.
21.
Hi, my name is Ravi Kurani, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sutro. We're about a year and a half old, and what Sutro does is we're actually remote water management. The current market that we're focusing on is for pools, spas, hot tubs, and jacuzzis. So interesting fact, actually 12% of US households have a recreational form of water in their backyard, and 85% of these people, 14.4 million people, actually manage it themselves. And that's a big issue because water is a pretty complicated thing to manage. And so what we've done is we've created an IoT device that you deploy into your swimming pool, spa, or jacuzzi. It then sends data, obviously, to the cloud in typical IoT format. You get something on your iPhone, and the interesting thing that we're doing is actually developing experiences around the chemical consumption, and we'll mail you chemicals to your doorstep that are right-sized for your pool.
Okay, great. So Ruth, talk a little bit about how People Power raised money and what worked and what didn't.
Okay. So People Power is an Internet of Things company. It has a software platform both in the cloud and on the mobile devices. And their initial offering was to turn your spare cell phones or spare smartphones into security cameras, or cameras that could be used to monitor your pets while you're at work, for example, which is one of the most favored uses of the application. And they did do a crowdfunding effort with Indiegogo, I think about a year and a half ago or so, for that software. And we learned a lot from that experience. We've also taken Accelerator funding. We did an initiative in Oahu using the Presence app that was extended to manage devices relating to energy and energy consumption. And that was a really great way to have a proof of concept. What we learned from that was that it's not just about having devices to tell you how much energy you're using. You need to engage with people and teach them how to notice which appliances are consuming the most electricity, and having kind of a gamification effort, so to, within the community, have people compete with each other to see how much energy they could save. And that's important in Hawaii because energy is very expensive in Hawaii. So it was a great way to prove our concept. People did save energy, people did get engaged, they learned a lot, they felt that the energy savings that they achieved were sustainable over time. I think People Power also has taken angel funding, and they do bootstrapping as well. I mean, it's an all of the above to get the market off the ground. And I think what's getting us traction now is Internet of Things applied to things that matter most to people. So I mentioned being able to monitor your pets. You can also monitor an elder relative. You can secure your home now. The application interacts with devices for security, so sensors on your doors, or humidity sensors or water sensors and things like that. So we have a security product that, by the way, we were going to have another Indiegogo campaign on May 27th for presence security. And also, so energy, saving money because you save power, and taking care of things at home, whether it is an older person or a pet. So that's what you engage people with, something that's really meaningful to them, and that's what's going to make the Internet of Things take off.
Okay, thank you. Ravi, your experience with raising money?
Sure. So we have 3 very large funders that initially funded us. It was American Express, MasterCard, and Visa. I basically maxed out all my credit cards before I actually took the first round of funding. So, you know, when I actually quit my job about...
We'll talk about the pros and cons of that later.
Yeah, definitely. I can talk about a lot of cons about that too. When I quit my job about 2 years ago, I made sure, I think one thing I tell all entrepreneurs is you should at least have about a year and a half worth of money to actually sustain yourself in your own bank account. Because the fact of the matter is you're going to pivot your business model from the first time you ever lay your eyes on something, you know, when you first decide to quit your job. With that said, we pivoted probably about 12 times since we first actually founded Sutro. We were first called Pool Locker, and to kind of walk you through that, I was basically working with my father. He was trying to sell things online, right? And we realized that the return rates were very, very high for pool and spa goods. And you know, that just kind of said something to me. I never really wanted to join, you know, Daddy's business. My dad actually had a chain of pool and spa stores in Southern California. And growing up, you know, I got a degree in mechanical engineering, moved to the city, never really wanted to get into the pool and spa business. Until through a series of pivots, I realized that there's a huge opportunity here. Secondly is that water is one of our most precious resources. And thirdly, California is not just going to shut down every single pool. So how do we actually solve this issue and help people manage the resources they have in their backyard a little better? Probably every week I have about 10 to 15 customer development calls. I literally am on the phone with customers for about 30 to 45 minutes each, understanding exactly what their problem is. And we never put anything into actual implementation engineering-wise until we've gotten validation from at least 10 to 15 of our customers. So how do we raise money? After, you know, Visa, American Express, and MasterCard funded us, the first actually employees that we had at Sutro were literally paid through my credit card, which I would not suggest anybody ever does. With that said, we basically found market validation because we went into somebody's backyard and we put up a quick little landing page. And the landing page said, hey, we have a smart device for your pool that can help you manage your chemistry. And a really interesting thing that we actually did was we put a PVC pipe with a little LED. And I said, I have to go out and actually check your pool. I have to check the device once a week, if you don't mind. What I was actually doing was going there and taking chemical measurements. I would go back home at Google Voice at night and email or text these people and say, hey, looks like your chlorine's a little low, your pH is a little high. Would you like us to deliver some acid to your doorstep? I'd actually completed the loop this time manually, which was very inefficient. But that first thing actually proved the model. With this, I could then actually go to my dad or to my uncle, which was the toughest thing to do, to say, hey, I need $5,000 because I'm raising a round of $50,000. At that point in time, once I talked to all my friends and family, I was actually then able to go to an accelerator, which we are actually a part of Bolt Hardware Accelerator, which is Boston-based. They've just launched in San Francisco now. And we finally, at the very end, after competing at TechCrunch Disrupt this January, were able to round both Spark Labs Global and Inkwell, who are two institutional funders.
And what would you say are the pros and cons of using an accelerator?
The pros and cons, I guess, just talking about my experience in general. When you're building an IoT company, you're not just building the hardware, right? You have to have an entire team that does software as well. And in our case, we have an entire team that's looking at distribution and logistics for the chemical shipping. And frankly, in our team actually right now, we have more chemical engineers than we do any other engineering talent. With that said, going to a hardware accelerator has been an enormous benefit. And I would recommend Bolt, personally, because Ben Einstein and Axel Bichara are just great to deal with. And the fact that they actually have almost an outsourced engineering team that we can actually tap into. The early stages of running a startup, you want to make sure you hire quick and fire quickly. But when you actually have an outsourced team that you can look at on a daily basis, it just expands how much you're actually able to do resource-wise.
And you have to give up a fair amount of your company to be part of an accelerator. But in your view, in your mind, it was worth it. It was worth it.
It was completely worth it. Yeah, you can look at, Techstars takes anywhere between 4 to 7% for around $75,000 to $125,000 of investment. Y Combinator actually takes between 7 and 9%. Bolt has explicitly written on their website they take 10%. So you're giving up a pretty decent chunk of your company. Yeah.
And Ruth, you mentioned that you're about to embark on an Indiegogo campaign with People Power. So what made you decide to go that way, and what do you see as the pros and cons?
So I think one of the most important things that you gain from an Indiegogo campaign it's not just the money, it's the market awareness, and it's the ability to drive momentum for a new product that you're bringing to market. And so we see this as an opportunity not just to raise capital to kind of prime the manufacturing pump, in our case, for present security, but really to gain some awareness in the marketplace for this. And I think, from an accelerator standpoint, I think we found that to be a very valuable experience because it paired us up, the accelerator program that we were part of, paired us up with a number of other organizations, and in this case, the utility in Oahu. And it, again, talk about awareness. I mean, they have the capacity to market that program in a way that we couldn't have done it on our own. So I think we gained, not only was it successful with the consumers, but it really did raise our profile quite significantly. So I think, from a marketing standpoint, and yes, I'm a marketing person, I see a lot of value in both of those programs.
And you specifically chose Indiegogo. Did you look at Kickstarter and the
in
others?
this case, I think one of the restrictions you have with Kickstarter is you can't do security products, and we are offering a security product, and Indiegogo is more open to that, so I think that's why we chose them. And they have been great. I would say that one of the things we've learned in these programs, I know it's probably your next question, what are the things that you learned? There's so much competition now with these programs, you really need to do a professional job. And you should get help. It's an art and a science. And there are plenty of people out there with great experience. You know, in our case, we have found a really good company to work with to produce a video, very professionally done video. And, you know, companies like Indiegogo and Kickstarter give you advisors, and you need to take advantage of them. They know what's been successful, and they can give you guidance on how to make your program successful. Also, I mean, we just looked at successful campaigns and what they looked like, and we looked at unsuccessful campaigns because you can learn a lot from failure too. So in our case, we went with them for a specific reason, but we found them actually very good to work with.
I would suggest that if you feature the people power bands, you will dramatically improve your exposure. And Ravi, what about you? What have you learned both using crowdfunding and Accelerator?
Sure. So from the crowdfunding side of it, we're obviously in prototype phase right now, and I think it's this feeling in the hardware industry of when you launch a product on Kickstarter to get money from it, you end up not actually succeeding in your campaign because you can't deliver the product to your end user for, you know, upwards of 6 to 8 months to a year, right? And you get into this cycle of continuously emailing your backer saying, hey, look, we're not ready yet, we're going to need another 6 months. And that's never good to do. With that said, right, with us being in prototype phase, I think using either Kickstarter or Indiegogo is going to be more of a marketing push. It's going to be more of a visibility issue come time where we know that we're going to launch, you know, in 3 months. And at that point in time, you know, 3 months before that is when we'll actually launch the Kickstarter Indiegogo campaign. There's been many times when I've actually almost pulled the trigger to do that, but we've always backed off with this, just knowing that I don't want to email my backers every 3 months to say we're not ready yet.
I would have to agree with that. Don't overpromise and under-deliver. It's a recipe for disaster. So you got to time it right.
Okay. So I have a question from the audience, which deals with the order that one should pursue these various funding sources. Friends Network first, or Angel first, or crowdfunding, or Accelerator. Is there a specific order that you might suggest?
Yeah, I mean, just speaking from kind of personal experience, I think the hardest thing to do is to actually ask your friends and family for money. And if you can cross that barrier, then I think pitching to an accelerator right after that would be the next thing I would do. And probably when you're actually ready to raise a round and you've actually proven some customer development and you've actually done research around that, I would then go to the angels and the larger institutional VCs.
You know, I think it depends on who you are and what kind of resources you have access to. You know, in the case of People Power, Gene Wang, the CEO, had already been a 4-time very successful entrepreneur and had sold companies for, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars. And so, you know, he had access to capital angel funding that somebody else might not have. So I think you just have to go with your strength and you know, play it by ear.
I guess adding to that, I would just say, you know, that was an amazing comment, but personally for me, it's almost a leverage issue, right? So if you can pitch to your friends and family, in my case first, I wasn't a repeat entrepreneur, this is my first time doing this, and if you can get your friends and family on, you can then leverage that relationship to get into an accelerator, to say, look, I've raised 50K, can you let me into this accelerator? Once you get in the accelerator, you now have a proof point that you can then go to angels and say, look, we're part of Bolt, somebody else believes in us, do you believe in us as well? And once that happens with the smaller angels, you can then go to the institutionals and say, I've gotten friends and family, I've gotten the accelerator, I've gotten these angels, do you believe in this concept as well?
So there are apparently hundreds of accelerators here in the United States. How do you decide which one to use?
It's kind of like dating, right? We actually interviewed for a few different accelerators. It really boiled down to the connections that we made and just how we felt with the partners and how we generally felt with the resources that they were giving. I don't think there's any kind of, you know, high and tight answer of which one to choose.
Ruth?
Yeah, I think it depends on what their focus is and what your focus is and what you're trying to accomplish. And usually you can find a good match. In our case, you know, we found an accelerator program that was really looking seriously at how to engage people in saving power and saving energy. And it was a unique opportunity for us. We not only had a product, but we had an approach that was unique to the market. It's been very effective, and I think, it was ended up being a win-win for everybody.
Maybe that's an idea, a dating app for accelerators.
There you go.
Startups. There you go. I claim that one. What about, can crowdfunding work with enterprise applications or only consumer ones, do you think?
You want to take that first, Ruth?
I don't see why it couldn't work with enterprise applications. I mean, I guess it depends on, who your audience is. So there are plenty of folks who work in enterprises that could benefit from certain products and make their jobs easier. Maybe they would get their companies to get behind something like that. I hadn't really thought about it. It's a different approach, but it could be a very interesting one. What if you did have an application? Well, let's look at the one that most recently, got capitalized to, a valuation of $4.5 billion, and that's Zenefits. So Zenefits was an interesting idea that might very well have worked well in that kind of fundraising, because it was all for small and medium-sized businesses, and it was a free app. It's a free app, and Zenefits makes their money by taking a percentage of products that get sold that are related to the application, insurance, products for enterprises and things like that. So I think it could work, but it's different.
Okay, Ravi?
I guess I would boil this down to three kind of buckets, right? You can look at crowdfunding as almost a channel strategy to either acquire customers or get money, right? And if you look at what the sales cycle is of your product, whether it be enterprise or B2C, you really need to boil down to who your influencers are, who is the product actually made for, and who's writing the check, right? So I think in that sense, crowdfunding could potentially be used for selling enterprise-based models, but it depends on who's writing the check, right? So if you're selling a product like Zenefits and you use Kickstarter to launch it, I don't know if I personally would go to Kickstarter to fund a Zenefits type product, unless they're a startup and they need some capital to do X, Y, Z. But in order to actually purchase Zenefits, I may deal with a whole different sales cycle where I may actually want a rep from Zenefits to call me and explain what the actual relationship is. How does it actually work?
It's different. There definitely would have to have a program that's uniquely tailored for that type of interaction, because you're right, there's certainly distinctions associated with an enterprise sale.
Okay, well, I think we've got just a couple more minutes, so why don't we just end with any general advice you might have for those entrepreneurs here who want to get into the IoT space?
Yeah, I guess I can boil it down to two main points. The first one is realize that you're not just building a hardware company, that you are building three distinct, or at least two distinct business models, one around software and one around the actual hardware. And the second thing I would like to say is, as an entrepreneur, I think my only job is to mitigate risk all across the board, right? When I look at anything that I'm actually doing, it's, am I mitigating risk? And I could boil those down to three distinct buckets, right? The first one is focusing on your actual personnel risk. Do you have the team that can actually build this product? The second is looking at technology risk. Do you have the technology itself to actually do what you say you're going to do? And the third, which is most important to VCs that I've personally found in the last year, is can you mitigate your customer development risk? And that's kind of the three buckets that I would look at.
So I would say a couple things. The first thing I mentioned earlier, but I think it's worth repeating, and that is, especially for a consumer market, I think for the enterprise too, you got to develop something that reaches someone at an emotional level, right? It's got to be something that's really meaningful to them. This is a new concept, right? And it's just getting off the ground, and making it, connecting it to something that's meaningful in people's lives, I think, is a great way to have a product that's going to be successful. I think focus, you mentioned focus. I would say focus, 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 focus. Really develop something, develop a really well-designed product, target your market, exploit that market, and expand from there. I think that's what most folks want to see from you. And then the third thing is, mask the complexity of the product. Make it simple, make it fun. The easier it is to use, and I've heard this said in a number of other sessions today, the easier it is for the product to be used, the lower the barriers to being adopted. So those are the three things I would mention.
Okay, great. Well, we have our third panelist here, and she's been working on an IoT app for managing traffic here in the Bay Area for the last hour. So we've actually been given an overtime period, so we're going to spend just a few extra minutes on the panel. So
Thank you.
welcome, Danielle, and why don't you introduce yourself and your company and talk a little bit about your experience with crowdfunding and accelerators.
Sure. So I run a company, it's called Other Machine Company, and we build a desktop-sized tool for manufacturing. So people use it for prototyping 3D metal parts or circuit boards for electronic devices. We were on a DARPA-funded grant for about a year and crowdfunded after that. And so it was really interesting developing a product for the government and then immediately switching to a consumer product. But we found that crowdfunding for us was really the bridge to venture capital. So we were government funded and then Kickstarter funded, so crowdfunded, and then after that funded by venture capital. So, and a mixture of angels and institutional VCs. So we've kind of run the gamut of where all money can come from. But now we're to the point where it's like, you know, we're a company that's really passionate about putting the hands for manufacturing into, or putting the tools for manufacturing into the hands of the people so that people can grow up not only knowing how to use a screwdriver, but knowing how to program a computer-controlled machine so that the future of manufacturing can actually be fully automated.
So you are not funded by MasterCard or American Express?
No.
Okay, good. So which crowdfunding channel did you use, and what were the pros and cons?
We used Kickstarter. I would say the pros are that everybody knows about Kickstarter. It's almost a verb, I would say, at this point. And they were really helpful to us because they knew a lot about hardware. They had seen a lot of companies like us come and go, and that was fantastic. And now they have like analytics integrated with their platform, and so we could focus on the part that we were good at, which is the storytelling, creating a compelling product, and talking about that. The cons are that, and the cons really have nothing to do with Kickstarter, but more crowdfunding in general, which is you make a lot of promises, and the weight of those promises is heavy. And it, in turn, you know, and for a hardware company where you're like, well, we've made one of a thing, now we need to figure out how to make multiples of a thing, and it's going to have these features, except for we have no idea how long it's going to take to make those features, and you really want to perform well, but you're under the gun and you're beholden to these promises that you made before you knew anything. So it's really tough. It's a huge stress, and I think that a lot of people wouldn't enjoy that experience.
So your advice might be to be careful, and we heard that already on the panel about what promises are made early on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, it's great because people on crowdfunding, who run crowdfunding campaigns are really adventurous, and they believe everything is possible, which is great, but also, you're not going to please everyone, and you're not going to do it on time. So you can just communicate as much as possible about the process. That's really the key, or was for us.
Words to live by. Any advantages or disadvantages as you went into your VC round, having been crowdfunded?
For us, we got to have 200 machines out in the hands of people for 12 months before we were taking money, which is amazing because we could, instead of imagining what people were going to use it for, we could actually point to actual people and have a story and say, this is how much consumables they purchased over the period of months. And so just having data, even though it was a small amount, I think was really useful. And the benefit of you have 200 out there, but nothing's for sale yet, so you don't have slow sales numbers to fundraise on. It was pretty key for us.
Any downside?
Well, yeah, if it's not a millions and millions of dollars campaign, they're just, you know, the bar is set really high for Kickstarter campaigns now, so yeah. Okay.
And I asked this question earlier, and you, I think, would be a good person to give your perspective. It actually came from the audience. Can enterprise products be successfully crowdfunded?
I think so, and I also think it's a unique way to tell a story of a product from a large company. And large companies don't usually have a face, like this is the story of our company, and this is the spokesperson for our company, and this is what we care about. And it's a unique chance to really share that part of large companies because they have souls too. You can
Really?
Yeah, totally.
Oh.
And so I think it's just a different marketplace. It's like instead of selling brick and mortar, you're selling online, and also there's this aspect of selling your product that can be crowdfunding, and I think it works for small and large.
And did you consider an accelerator?
I did, and this might sound really bad to other people, but I didn't like the deal. So
You talked about that?
percentage for money taken wasn't appealing to me.
Uh-huh. Okay. And did you date a number of them, or did you go straight for the proposal?
I guess I had friends who dated them,
Uh-huh.
so I didn't want to.
Yeah, we were talking about a dating app for crowdfunding, but okay, great. Well, what general advice would you have for budding entrepreneurs in the IoT space?
Bootstrap, bootstrap, bootstrap. Don't take anyone's money for as long as humanly possible. And now it's nice because there are tools out there for prototyping. If you have a physical device, obviously software is kind of free for building apps and things like that. I would just get as far as you possibly can without ever taking any money, because as soon as you get on that train, you can't get off for maybe a decade.
Yep.
So that's my one advice, I guess.
So one late-breaking question for you is why crowdfunding versus an angel? Did you consider angel investing?
I didn't know any angel investors until we crowdfunded, and a number of them bought our machines because they were interested in it. So also for us, it was a way of getting connected to a few high-profile people who became evangelists and also connected us to other angels. We have actually 39 investors, so a lot of it is angels, but mostly people that I met after we had done crowdfunding.
Okay, great. Well, I am so glad that you made it here. And thank you to our wonderful panelists for talking about your experiences.
Why